as a former president, but almost as though he is a sitting president. As Boris, you just noted, getting a briefing from FEMA, getting a briefing from the National Guard. That is not something that is typically just offered to a candidate. They are treating him as though he is a former president who is there to help. And one thing that I had noticed earlier during our 1 p.m. conversation was that Donald Trump did not have that much to offer in terms of resources since he is not a sitting president. But I will note that he and the campaign say that they have arrived in that area with trucks full of supplies that they plan on giving out. So there is something there for them to offer. He also said that he had a tanker truck full of gasoline, which obviously, if you've ever covered one of these storms, you understand that one of the first things and hardest things to come by is gasoline. So he said that he was going to be giving that out. He is clearly taking this seriously as a politician is on the ground, trying to show that he is there in support of the people on the ground in Georgia.
Thanks so much.
The legacy media is going through a full-blown panic. Just 5 weeks from Election Day, Kamala is actually experiencing her own Katrina, all at the same time that dock workers across ports.
Folks, we'll get to the electoral map real fast, okay, in the next few seconds. But before we do so, I just wanted to sort of set up this mind narrative of the political tsunami that is occurring, this groundswell that's occurring for President Trump, while Vice President Harris sits at the head of the table with a shit-eating grin on her face where it says, helping people before, during, and after disasters. That means absolutely nothing if all you're doing is doing photo ops and talking bullshit and having, as I said, a crap-eating grin on your face when you don't even have a clue as what to do. My question basically is, where is President Biden? Isn't he still the president of the United States? Why the hell is Vice President Harris sitting at the head of the table at FEMA? It should be Biden, but we all know he's mentally incapacitated. He doesn't even know what's going on. So of course he has to sit there. And she wants to sit there. Why? To make it look like that she's presidential. It's a freaking photo op for her. It's not about helping people. It's not about bringing food, groceries, supplies, gasoline, water, necessities that are needed by people. I mean, that's not what's happening. But who's doing it? President Trump is doing it. He's the one that's bringing supplies from his own money. He's bringing in trucks. He's bringing in gas. He's bringing in the supplies necessary for these people to survive. You don't think the people of the country, this is the Katrina for Kamala. This is Kamala's Katrina. Now, I want to, there's so many things that I want to do to sort of set up why I think the electoral map, there's a political tsunami that's occurring there. And this has a tremendous amount to do with it. And if it just didn't push this little snowball that rolls down the hill and gathers even more snow as it keeps going, this, folks, is what's going to do it when people see the response from a former president who literally has nothing behind him. He doesn't have the government behind him. These people have the government behind, but they're not doing a goddamn thing for the people in the affected areas of Georgia, North Carolina, and wherever in Tennessee and other places where this severe, unbelievable storm has wrought, destruction and death. Anyways, check out the grin, check out the absolute fear in her eyes, and then we're going to go to Scott Jennings as he's on a CNN panel and literally, folks, wrecks the entire panel, and they don't even know what to say because they know that everything he's saying is completely 1,000% true. They don't have an answer to what he said. So let's go from the shit-eating grin to Scott Jennings. We're going to do that right now. Check it out. There's the grin. The SEG, the crap-eating grin.
Thanks so much.
You see the fear in her eyes, folks? Did you see the fear in her?
I think the optics of this over the weekend for Biden and Harris have been pretty poor. I mean, North Carolina is underwater. These people are devastated and struggling. But you've got Biden at the beach and then saying, what do you want from me? I got on the phone while I was at the beach. And you've got Harris out raising money on the campaign and then taking a photo on a plane. Now, I remember George W. Bush was pilloried for having a photo taken from.
Yeah, remember that, folks?
She's got a photo on a plane, and the earphones don't appear to be connected to the phone, and the paper looks like it's blank. So it looked like a stage sort.
So you've got this hack, I think his name is Boykin or whatever, this race baiter, this race hater, this race traitor, this so-called journalistic hack. He's just sitting there. He knows that he can't say a damn thing against Scott Jennings because it's all true. Biden doing nothing, saying, yeah, I made a couple of phone calls. Harris doing photo ops and fundraising off of this. I mean, it is a unmitigated disaster. And the legacy media is absolutely beside themselves because they don't know how to spin this any other way. In the meantime, Trump is down there in those affected areas doing everything that he can as a one-man show. It's not even close in terms of how the legacy media is going to spin this because the people are out there, they know, they're seeing it, they're feeling it, they're hearing it. And it's just going unbelievably against, Kamala Harris right now. Now, let's check out the RCP polling averages, and then we got some videos to back up why I think what's happening in the Electoral College, why it's happening, what's going to continue to happen, and why these demographics that normally were for the Democrats and for Kamala Harris are shifting away toward the Republican and towards Donald Trump and the conservative movement, folks. Let's check out that RCP polling and we'll go from there. So, folks, right now, as you can see, October 1st, 2024, the RCP averages right now have already given 281 electoral votes to Donald Trump, to 257 for Waltz. That's what's on the RCP map. And as you can see here, Pennsylvania is now red. North Carolina is red. Georgia is red. Arizona is red. Now, what's left over, we know, of the battleground states? They still think, according to RCP averages, Nevada is still blue. So is Minnesota. So is Wisconsin. So is Michigan. So is the 2nd District of Nebraska. So is New Hampshire. Now, as I've told you before, my map is something like this. So Nevada, I think, is going to be leans Republican. I've got leans Republican there. I think that New Mexico is going to lean Republican. Minnesota, I think, is going to lean Republican. Wisconsin, I think, is going to be likely Republican. Michigan, I think, is going to be likely Republican. I'm going to continue with leans Republican for Nebraska 2nd District. I believe New Hampshire is going to be leans Republican. And I still think Virginia is going to lean Republican, which is why I come up with 345 to 193. Now, I know I'm putting myself out there for a lot of you, and you're wondering, Dr. Nasser, how, on what basis? Well, if you take a look at the polls that are out there, Atlas Intel, I know Atlas Intel said North Carolina was given a +3. I just think that I know they were the #1 pollster out there, and okay, that's their snapshot in time. But I think that North Carolina poll may be an outlier because they're still factoring in some of the stuff from the governor's race. But if you take a look overall in the national race, they've got Trump up like 3 to 4% in the national polls. Right there. He's always been underestimated, you know that, by 3 to 4 points. So my reasoning is that if he's been underestimated by 3 to 4 points, and you take a look at all the crosstabs, you take a look at all the other polls that are out there, both left-leaning, right-leaning, whatever you want to call it, those that play down the middle, very few of those or whatever. You take a look at the crosstabs, you take a look at the likely voter scenario versus registered voter scenario. You take a look at what's happening in the demographics between blacks, between union workers, between Hispanics and Latinos and Muslim voters. The gender gap, you take a look at all of that. And I say, okay, let's assume that he doesn't get the 3 to 4 overperformance. He's going to get some overperformance. He's not going to underperform the polls, folks. That's just not going to happen. So if he's underperformed before by 3 to 4, let's say we give him 2 points of overperformance. Rasmussen has him as +3. Atlas Intel has him at +3 to 4. Some of the others have him +2, +3. Let's assume it's just +2. And you add the +2 overperformance, you now are at +4. Well, if he's remember we've always said that the Democrats, in order to win the Electoral College, they need to be at +4, +5, or at least high in the 3 point, near 4. They can't be tied or 0 or 1 or 2 points or 3 points. They, in order to secure an electoral advantage, they need to be 4 and above. Biden was 4.5 and he barely won. What do you think is going to happen this time when you don't have good old Scranton Joe in the Rust Belt? Now take a look at these demographics, folks. I'm going to play you some videos, and that's why I put them into my narrative, into my scenario of the Electoral College. Because things don't happen in a vacuum. You don't start winning Ohio by over 10 points, which I think Ohio is going to probably be in the 12 to 14 point category win. You don't win Ohio by 12 points or 14 points and lose across the nation. It doesn't work that way. You don't win Ohio and lose Iowa. You don't win Pennsylvania by 4 to 5 and lose Michigan or Wisconsin. You don't win Georgia by 4 to 5 and lose North Carolina by 3 to 5. I mean, that just doesn't, it's so improbable unless something weird is going on. So that's where I take it. And I'm going out on a limb a little bit because I am taking a look and saying that, you know what, New Mexico, I'm putting it in our column. Minnesota in our column. New Hampshire in our column. Nebraska 2 in our column. Virginia in our column. I never thought North Carolina was a swing state or a battleground state. I think that was just being made up by the mainstream media, the legacy media, just so they'd have more eyes coming to them, more viewership. Let's add another state to the mix. What difference does it matter if we're off a little bit? I never assumed North Carolina was firmly, I believed. Now, would I be upset if New Mexico stays blue, or Nevada stays blue, or Minnesota stays blue, or Virginia stays blue? Hell no. As long as we get to 270, what do I care? But it would be nice to win those and be in the high, the mid 300s. That would be an Electoral College landslide along with the popular vote. Now let's go to this first video that I have, which is talking about union voters, union households, folks. This is absolutely devastating for Kamala Harris because there are a huge number of those voters. We already saw when they took a poll, it was 60% union voters for Trump, 38% for Harris. Let's take a look at what CNN is talking about, folks. I mean, the alarm bells are ringing. Watch this.
Points that just jump off the screen should set off sirens. All right, this is union households. This is Democratic margin in presidential election. It ain't what it used to be. You go back to 1992, Bill Clinton won that union vote by 30 points. Hillary Clinton only won it by 12 points back in 2016. That was the lowest mark for a Democrat since 1984, Mondale versus Reagan. But look at where Kamala Harris is today. She's only leading by 9 points. That would be the worst Democratic performance in a generation, 10 points off the mark of Joe Biden, who of course won 4 years ago, was sort of that union guy, Union Joe, right? Won it by 19 points. She's 10 points off his mark, and the worst in a generation, if this in fact holds, Sarah. It is vocational degree. Look at this margin. This to me, oh boy, does this tell you about the state of our politics now versus back in the early 1990s. Margin among vocational and trade school grads in pre-election polling. Bill Clinton was leading that vote over George H.W. Bush by 7 points. Look at where Donald Trump is today over Kamala Harris, a 31-point advantage. When I think people think of the working class, they think of people who use their hands, and we know that Donald Trump has been going after that vote, and he is in a very, very strong position, more so perhaps than any other bloc. The folks who go to trade school, vocational school, that has moved from being a core Democratic group to now being a core group of Donald Trump's massive amount of support among the working class.
All right, let's move on to voters of color. And there's a very specific group that you looked at. And what are you seeing there?
Yeah, you know, we've been noting on this program, right, that Donald Trump seems to have been having some real impact among voters of color, getting into that traditional Democratic support. And I was very interested to see this because we're talking about the working class, right? So this is the margin among non-college graduates, all right, the voters of color. You go back 4 years ago, look at that. Joe Biden won that group by 45 points. Look at where Kamala Harris's support is today. She's still leading amongst that group, but that lead is down 17 points to just 28 points. And I will note that the margin among voters of color who actually graduate college has only been changed by 5 points. 5 points compared to 4 years ago. The reason Donald Trump is doing so well amongst voters of color is because he has really gone in and grabbed a lot of voters that he didn't previously have among those who didn't graduate college. And this is part of a larger trend that we're seeing throughout our politics era, in which Republicans, specifically Donald Trump, is doing very, very well among working class voters, whether they were in unions, whether they went to trade school, or whether they're voters of color. The fact is Donald Trump seems to have gone into a hotbed of traditional Democratic support and made a lot of movement in ways I don't think a lot of people would have thought when he went down that escalator just back in 2015.
All right, Harry. And
Check, 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 check. Check, 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 check. So if you thought those numbers are bad enough, folks, I mean, among those non-college voters of color, among trade school, people, both men and women, majority men, and then you're taking a look at union households. If you want to see even more why I'm saying that this is going to be an electoral vote tsunami, check out what happens when I believe it's MSNBC goes out to Nevada to talk to some voters and listen to what a couple of these voters had to say about Trump versus Kamala. Check this out.
I love what Donald Trump did for us as an economy while he was in presidency, and I don't know what she has to offer because she's new. So that's kind of like taking a chance on her, you know.
The 4 years he was in office, we were doing good, absolutely good. Kamala, she's already in office and ain't done. And
so now I want to show you what's happening with the Latino voters, what's happening in the Hispanic community, folks. To add insult to injury. That's what's happening, folks. Every single time we're just adding more insult to injury. Check this out.
New polling, a new view of a potentially decisive factor in November, the Latino vote. That demographic now makes the second largest eligible voting bloc in America. And our latest poll shows Vice President Harris has a 14-point lead over former President Trump among Latino voters. However, that is the smallest edge for Democrats in years. Let's discuss all of this with NBC News national political correspondent Steve Kornacki at the big board. Give us the details of all this polling. Break it down for us.
Yeah, Anna, I mean, the key is what you were saying at the end there about, look, on the surface here, this is a 14-point lead among Latinos for Kamala Harris. But the key is the context. What has this looked like among Latino voters in past elections, in recent elections? These are the exit polls. You go back to 2012. Remember, Barack Obama was running for re-election. He won the Latino vote by 44 points. Hillary Clinton by 38 in 2016. Joe Biden by 33 in 2020. And then look here, that drop, the drop in that number down to 14 points now in our poll. This has been one of the key questions since 2020 when we saw Republicans make some gains with Latinos then. Could they lock those in? Could they expand them? Our poll suggests.
So I ask you folks, is this the trend that you want to see? You were plus 44 in 2012, went down 6 points in 4 years, went down another 5 points in 4 years, and now you drop down to 14, a 19-point drop in 4 years? And then you wonder why my narrative, my predictions are that Trump's at 345? I mean, I just look at the polls like this. And this is just in the Latino polls, folks. Just the Latino polls. Let's check out the gender gap within the Latino population. Check this out.
A couple of big gaps here. There's a gender gap. Among men, the Trump-Harris race is tied.
Tied,
among women,
folks.
Harris with a 26-point lead. Among Hispanic women, there is an age gap. Younger, under 50. Harris only ahead by 3 points. Over 50. Look at that. She leads by 30 points. Then layer those on top of each other. Gender and age. And you start to see more divides. Men, under 50. Trump with an advantage of 9 points over.
Folks, that's huge. Under 50. That's only going to get bigger in the conservative movement, in the Republican movement. And we can work on the men over 50, the women under 50, and the women over 50. Those are lost. Those are lost, folks, in the Latino community. But the women under 50, that plus 12, that's a number that we can dig into. In 4 years, suppose we take that plus 12 and half that to plus 6 for whoever's on the Democratic side. The same thing for men. Half that. And increase the men under 50 by another 5, so we're up plus 15, plus 16. Imagine what type of electoral advantage that's going to give us in places like Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Georgia, Florida, Texas, places where you have large Hispanic, Latino communities.
Over Harris. Harris leads men over 50, women under 50. And then look at this. Harris's core group, Hispanic women over 50 years old. Look at the gap between Trump with young men and Harris with older women. A lot of room in between those two, a giant gap. And we also have this. We talk about an education divide. We talk about this a lot with white voters. It's become one of the big features of the white electorate. You see it here, starting to see a little bit with the Hispanic electorate. Men without a 4-year degree voting for Donald Trump, they say, by a margin of 13 points right now. And again, women with.
So we see this again, as you said, within the white working class group. College, no college. Trump's up 13. Men with college degrees in the Latino community, up 16. Women, no degree, 27. Women with college. I mean, that's there. And so, again, Trump is going to get a huge amount. He is going to drive up that white vote, in the white population. He's going to drive up, that white vote in the Latino population, because you've got Latinos of all colors, light-skinned Latinos, dark-skinned Latinos. It just doesn't matter. But, we divide and slice and dice all the time, for political reasons or whatever. Now, if that's nothing, to take a look at, that's the gender gap. What do you think is happening within the religious gap between Latinos? What do you think is happening between the Protestant Latinos and the Catholic Latinos. Where are they standing? And then finally, we'll go back to the RCP map, and I'll tell you what's happening in Michigan, in Hamtramck and Dearborn, as to what's happening with that political tsunami in there, which is allowing President Trump to win Michigan as well. But check out this religious gap within the Latino community. Check this out, folks.
Gap. Look at this among Catholic Hispanics. Harris is leading. She's leading big by 20 points. Among Protestants, total reversal. Trump leading by 26 points. So some of the gaps there, some of the sort of gaps between.
So as you can see there, President Trump looks like he's in a solid lead with the Protestant vote within the Latino community. Looks like she's got the Catholic vote in terms of how she's up percentage-wise, both in the low to mid-20s. And you see a divide there within Catholic and Protestants for who they're choosing. I want to take you back to the RCP map and hone in on Michigan and share with you what's happening with the Muslim vote as of late that is coming in from Hamtramck in Dearborn, Michigan. So let's go to the RCP polling map, and I'll explain what's happening with Michigan Muslims. Let's do that. Check this out. What's been the entire narrative, folks, so far? Pennsylvania is the key to victory for either candidate. He or she, whoever wins Pennsylvania, goes to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Well, there is obviously some truth to that. You've got to win Pennsylvania. But I think they're leaving out Michigan. And what's happening, folks, in the state of Michigan is that you have to understand, you've got third-party candidates there. Nobody is talking about this. I don't hear it. It's just hushed up. The Senate candidate, Slotkin, basically in a phone call, raising the red flags. And I don't think the Harris campaign liked this, but saying that Harris, their own internal polls showing that Harris is underwater. Underwater doesn't mean you're tighter by one. Underwater means 3 to 4 points. Now, I don't know if the Slotkin campaign threw this out there because they need some more, juice, more boost of fundraising, and are trying to, it's close, and they just want to, sound some, I don't know, sirens. But regardless, I'll tell you, if you take a look at the latest polls, this is a couple of weeks ago, Jill Stein, Green Party candidate, is getting 40% of the Muslim vote. Trump's at 18. Harris is at 12. In Nevada, Harris has 29% of the Muslim vote. Trump's got 27. Stein's around 13. Now, I'm not in any, delirium thinking that Trump's going to win, the predominant proportion of the black vote or the Hispanic vote or the Muslim vote. But he doesn't need to win all of it. He just needs to win a couple of points. You've got abandoned Harris out there, which is not just Harris uncommitted. They're doing what they say, if we go third party or we sit it out or we vote for Trump, we are going to do whatever we can to make sure that Harris and Walz do not get elected to the presidency and vice presidency of the United States. They're going to do everything in their power, legally and democratically, to not allow that to happen. So now you've got the black vote, where 1 out of 4 black men under the age of 50 is voting for Donald Trump. You've got about 8 to 9% of black women voting for Donald Trump. You all saw what was happening with the shift in the Latino vote. And I'm telling you what's happening in terms of the Muslim vote. And that's why I'm saying I think Michigan is a 3 to 5 point win for Trump. Wisconsin's 3 to 5. Pennsylvania's 3 to 5. Minnesota's a lean. New Hampshire, lean Republican. Virginia, lean. Georgia, win. New Mexico, win. Arizona, win. Nevada, win. Anyways, love to see your comments. Love to see, share what you think. If you think I'm just completely out of my mind, off my rocker, let me know. If you agree, let me know. Put your electoral college values down. Love to hear it. Take a look at our other video links above and below. You're watching the Dr. Nasser Sheikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasser. Let me leave you with my final thought as always. When you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.